Let me start with my story, I guess. So my name's Simon. I'm the father of 3 girls. And 3 years ago, on the 6th of January, we were in Oakey Bay, which is a very small little bay, having our last family swim for the summer, something that most families can relate to. On this particular day on the beach, there would have been 20 people, and that was the moment our life changed, because our 5-year-old was walking down off the back of the boat, slipped and fell perhaps a metre with a life jacket into the water. What we didn't know then is that her heart had stopped, and by the time we got her back up on board and rolled her over, she was blue with her tongue out. And it was at that moment that I had every parent's worst nightmare. Number one, I didn't know how to do CPR, and number two, we didn't have a defibrillator. Through what I can only describe now as grace or a miracle, there happened to be an emergency trained nurse on the beach that day who swam 40 metres to our boat and did 45 minutes of CPR. Additionally, miraculously, there was a defibrillator at Oakey Bay, and that got onto our boat. So within 7 or so minutes of the event, we had an emergency trained nurse and a defibrillator. And what that meant was our daughter survived. She had 6 weeks in the incredible care of Starship, and now has a defibrillator under her ribcage wired to her heart to make sure that should she ever have a similar episode again, that she's very well protected. So that started in a journey on us trying to understand more about this thing called a cardiac arrest, because my misunderstanding was that happened to certain sorts of people, but not a healthy 5-year-old girl. And what we came to realize is cardiac arrests don't discriminate. They're not based on age, they're not based on gender, they're not based on race, size, any demographic. These things stalk, and when they strike, they kill. We learned that in New Zealand there is an 85% death rate for people that have a cardiac arrest. We learned that you are 650 times more likely to die from a cardiac arrest than you are from a fire. But every building and every apartment and every school across New Zealand has a fire extinguisher. And yet we have a huge underrepresentation of defibrillators, but even more sad, those defibrillators that we have are often locked behind offices or sports clubs during non-open hours. What that means is that as a country, as a parent, as a friend, as a neighbour, we take a risk. We take a risk that it won't be our child that has a cardiac arrest. We take a risk that it won't be our friend that has a cardiac arrest next to a sports club that happens to be shut, so we can't get into a defibrillator. We take a risk that our statistic, which globally is okay but not wonderful, won't continue to improve. And the largest personal risk we take is that it won't relate to us, that these will be statistics, as they were in my mind, that happen to other people, that other people will encounter things like this. But when it's your healthy, vibrant 5-year-old girl that you can imagine now, blue with her tongue out, relying on other people to be able to save her, that's the worst moment imaginable for a parent. And what I find is unusual is that moment can be removed by some very simple precautionary steps. One is by having access to a defibrillator yourself. If there was such a thing as a genie that you could rub and say, what's my greatest imaginable dream? My dream would be that there would be a defibrillator next to every fire extinguisher in every school, every building, every apartment throughout New Zealand. If I could have a wish, it would be in every phone box, it would be every park, it would be a sticker on every venue that has a defibrillator, much like a Visa accepted hair sticker that says, in our building we care enough to want you to know that there is a defibrillator, such that if an event happened, you can make a difference, you could save a life. If I had it my way, every child as part of going through school would learn about CPR, they'd learn about defibrillation. They would address this misnomer, this myth that they're complicated things to use. We were told of some research out of the US that they got a group of health professionals and they said, in the room next to you, there's been a victim that's had a cardiac arrest and there's a defibrillator, go in and save them. And it took them 6 seconds to apply the defibrillator. They then got a group of 12-year-olds and said, in the room next to you, someone's had an event and there's a machine that can save them. How long will it take you to? And it took them a minute longer than it took the health professionals. These are not difficult things to use. Our greatest issue is awareness and access. So if I had it my way, it would be reported more frequently. It would be celebrated when a defibrillator saves someone's life. It would be unacceptable to leave school without knowing the statistics and what you can do to make a difference. That there would be family groups in every street through New Zealand that would raise money so that their street was covered. That you wouldn't have to walk more than 4 minutes at any one point to know where the nearest one was. That there would be apps, as there are now, but people aren't unaware of them, that can tell you where I am today, the closest distance to a publicly accessible defibrillator. That would make a demonstrable difference to the lives of New Zealanders every year.